Hello, listeners. A warm welcome to the Complete Life Show. I'm your host, Lisa Thomaides, and I'm so glad that you're tuned in. This show is all about finding peace and well-being through the mind-body-spirit continuum. My hope is we can all take away nuggets of information to help us lead our very best lives. Today, I would like to introduce you to Silvia Graber. Silvia is a registered holistic nutritionist and functional medicine health practitioner, also certified in therapeutic touch and energy healing. She incorporates functional medicine principles when working with clients, working with a root cause approach to all issues. She offers nutritional consultations, assessments, and individualized lifestyle and nutrition plans, as well as providing support for your health challenges. With a focus on gut health and digestive wellness and emotional wellness, Silvia helps you bridge that communication between your body and mind to achieve lasting wellness and balance. She's also experienced working with blood sugar imbalances, autoimmune diseases, hormone imbalances, allergies, and more. Silvia provides no-nonsense assistance in your quest for wellness, offered with compassion and patience. So without a further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Silvia. Welcome, Silvia. Hello to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm absolutely delighted. I'm fascinated with your work. For viewers, I never really mention what I do. I'm also a holistic practitioner. So there's certain areas that I really understand, and there's other areas that I've got so much to learn. And I know that I'm going to learn from you today, Silvia. So I really want you to share with us. I think the focus, the thing that I think a lot of people will really appreciate hearing about today specifically, is gut health, because you hear and read a lot about it, but people don't really know actually how important gut health is. So we could start there if you like, and share with us your wisdom and what you would like to share today about that.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, my focus for gut health really began a long time ago. It really started with my own health issues that I had early on in my 20s. I went through a lot of depression and a lot of trauma and a lot of, mood imbalances that I was working through, and really working really hard to help heal myself. And I tried quite a few different modalities, got into the energy healing a bit later. And that's when I really started really realizing, when I actually started nutrition and I started practicing, or I started studying functional medicine, I really realized that connection of, okay, I was addressing all these issues that I had, which I really was basing solely on the emotional component. And I really wasn't looking at what was happening biochemically in my body and what was happening in my physiology. And I realized that, wow, the gut connection was huge, just because I had always had some digestive issues, never really made that connection between what I was experiencing in my mind, mentally and emotionally, what was happening in my gut. And the more that I learned, the more that those pieces came together. And that's when I just went really deep into studying and researching and reading as much as I could on gut health and the microbiome. And it just blew me away. Just that connection was, learning things like that, we have more gut bugs than we do our own, DNA in our bodies.
Stop 1 second. We'll just pause. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then the fact that, there's the microbiome, and what makes up the composition of our guts, really rules everything. And that's a little scary. The more, when I was studying microbiology, I realized, wow, these bugs make neurotransmitters, they make hormones, they make all sorts of things, and these are all dependent on what we feed them. So, the composition of the bugs in our gut, really is based on that. And so if we really want, healthy, mental state and a healthy emotional state and healthy hormone balance, et cetera, we really have to make sure we're feeding the right guys, because we're feeding the wrong guys and you're going to get something like, a real imbalance, and that could really be pretty detrimental to your overall health in
and
general. Mental health especially, yeah, for sure.
And especially women with their hormones. I know from my own experience how severe PMS can be. And I don't know, why is it that we do not realize that what we eat is what we are, and that it makes perfect sense that we survive with food and water. So surely what we feed ourselves is going to have a massive impact on our well-being. So this is a really big topic. So tell us a little bit more about having a healthy gut, because for listeners out there, this is a lot of listeners have heard a little bit about this. Some are very educated on it, but there's a lot of people out there that really, there's a big disconnect with what they're eating, what they're drinking, and the fact that they are suffering with autoimmune diseases, with inflammatory joint pain, with high blood pressure, with cholesterol problems. And, you know, the traditional thing is to go to the doctor, and the doctor will usually give them a pill. They don't generally recommend changing a diet, although some are very informed and do. But this is where you step in, and you have a different approach. So tell us about that.
Yeah, the way that I work with people, I think, is a little bit different than I've seen other practitioners work, in the sense that I don't directly target symptoms. I don't treat, I don't diagnose, but what I see a big piece missing in the way that these kinds of different kinds of conditions are handled and managed is that the foundational needs of the body are not addressed at all. So I would say the majority of my clients that come to me don't really realize the importance of hydration. How that just even a little bit dehydration, how that can be detrimental to the body, and then how it can set off this domino effect of real sluggishness in all different body functions, something like that, you know. So when I say I focus on foundations, this is, you know, it's almost like building a house. When you build a house, you can have a really fancy roof, you can have all those, you know, fancy doors and, you know, fancy walls, but if you don't have a really solid base, that house is not going to stand very long. So I really equate that to the same way about how you work with the body. You work with the body from the bottom up. So you have to make sure that there's that solid base, meaning what are the necessities of the body? If you have those in place, there's amazing results that can happen just from that.
So give us an example of a foundational shift that you would tell people. Like most people, you know, they get up in the morning, they have their coffee, they have, I don't know, something to eat. Tell us how you would approach that.
So those foundational needs, I would say, are really, you know, off the top of my head would be something like having sufficient water, like I mentioned. Also, some level of stress management. So we're all dealing with lots of stressors in this world, especially in this day and age. What are you doing to help support yourself so you're not plugged in 24/7? I mean, that is really that stress is pretty huge, and it's not one that a lot of people really make that connection, just because we're so used to it. We're so used to being plugged in 24/7 on our phones 24/7. We're not really realizing you need that break. We need that. We're not biologically meant to be plugged into, you know, all this
stimulated all the time, and our cortisol levels are through the roof.
Exactly. So that's one big one, and then the hydration piece, and the food we eat as well. But also beyond the food we eat, I think it's how well we are digesting. So, you know, there's that saying, "We are what we eat." That's not really accurate. And then there's also, "We are what we eat and absorb." That's more accurate.
Right.
So you can be eating
all the right foods.
But your life is like, you know, your type A personality, you're running around, busy. You're not really giving yourself that time, that break. And you're constantly giving to others, especially if, you know, if you're a mother or a father with children and, you know, you're caretaking.
That's right.
Not much of that time is going to be to give to yourself. And so that tends to take a toll. You know, it takes a toll, and then we start noticing that the body starts to make adjustments to deal with all that. So it will do things like, it will, you know, do things that might not seem like it's the best. Like we might think, okay, my body's malfunctioning. It's actually not. Like it will downregulate, for example, cortisol production. If your body's going through a long period of stress, in the beginning stages, you're having high cortisol. After a while, the body notices that this is not a healthy thing, because too much cortisol going through the body for too long can turn inflammatory. And so the body, in its wisdom, will downregulate cortisol. And so you end up with a person who's like wired and tired. They have no energy, but they're feeling like, they're buzzing, they can't sleep, they have the insomnia, really bad fatigue, but they're just too stimulated at the same time. So what's going on there? It's because adrenaline has taken over, because the cortisol is like, nope, not happening here. And so another stress hormone has to kick in. And so the stress part is a big part, and that also affects the gut. So if you have high stress levels continuously, that even shifts down to a low stress level with low cortisol, a high stress level with low cortisol, that really slows the body down. So it slows the thyroid down, because we need enough cortisol to stimulate the thyroid.
And I know the thyroid is linked to so many. Go ahead.
And it also affects our digestive juices. So in the body's wisdom, when you don't have enough thyroid, you don't have enough cortisol going on, you're not going to have that sort of that spark to kick off that stomach acid. And when you don't have enough stomach acid, that starts that downward cascade to really imbalanced gut health. And that leads to, nutrient deficiencies, which really affect everything in the body. Yeah. So you need the nutrients, you need to have that good absorption in order to make neurotransmitters, which make your serotonin and your melatonin. You need to have all of that good enough proteins. You need to be able to absorb that in order to make your hormones, in order to have all your organs functioning properly. And so that's when we start to see, people who have really ongoing chronic issues that they're just not really understanding what's going on there. And so I always start with diet, generally, but I also look at the whole picture.
The lifestyle.
So what else is happening in the body? What else is happening in that person's life? Are they under continuous stress? What's their hydration like? So we really start with those basics. The kinds of results I've seen just by addressing hydration. I've had some clients this last year. It's been pretty phenomenal that the only change that I've made in that first couple weeks after our first session has been to increase their water intake with some electrolytes, because that's necessary to absorb the water. So a lot of people don't get that. They say, oh, I drink a lot of water, but
it just goes straight through.
It's going right through you. You need those electrolytes.
What sort of electrolytes are you talking about? Ones that you purchase or ones that come from fruit?
Electrolytes that, you can buy. So I have some good suggestions that I always give my clients for alternatives for, so they can try out to see which ones they prefer in terms of taste. And there's various ones, like there's Vega makes quite a good variety of different electrolyte products, which I really like their products myself. And I almost always suggest Soleil water for everybody, just because I really find people need some support with their adrenal system.
And what's Soleil?
So Soleil water is actually a really simple concoction to make from Himalayan sea salt. Oh. So it's almost like a concentrated salt mixture, and you make you just soak it overnight, and you make it in a mason jar, and then you have about a teaspoon or so a day. And that diluted in a larger amount of water will give you all those essential minerals that you need.
I went through a period, I remember, of doing that.
Yeah.
And having it in my bathroom and just taking a teaspoon at a time.
And that's helpful for digestion. It's helpful for detoxification. It's helpful for energy. And it's really, I find that has been so effective for my clients to just do that. Just to, up their water intake, everything starts working better when you start doing that. So for myself in my practice, I've noticed it's not really about tackling those, somebody comes to me and they have like
major
dozens and dozens of different kinds of issues and symptoms and diagnoses. And so it's not about, getting all stressed out about, I have this autoimmune, I have this and that. It's like,
Going down to the basics.
We actually have to work with each person the same way. So we start with each person the same way. Are you getting those foundational needs? And if you are, then we can move on to something a little deeper. But if those pieces are not in place, we cannot get far. We cannot, so this is a big thing that I found.
So after hydration, which, I totally resonate with everything you're saying and learning as you're talking, it's fascinating, of course. The next thing, which is the acidophilises and all that. People are like popping those like mad. And I know that there's a big difference in how those are absorbed, because often they don't even get into the gut.
Right.
So is that a next step? What's your next step there?
Probiotics are, they're necessary. I think they're a necessary component of certain foods. Like, I think those are really a thing that has been used for, generations, like fermented foods in the natural. That's more of a prebiotic. It feeds the good gut bacteria in your gut. In terms of taking supplemental probiotics, that's something that I've really mixed with, just because the studies show mixed reviews on the effectiveness.
They die before they get into the tummy, apparently.
Yeah, and it really depends on the source. It depends on the brand, obviously, but it depends on the type of probiotic you're using. So a lot of people will go to a store and they say, "Oh, just give me probiotics." Yeah. But it's really specific, because if you're actually each bacteria works in a different way. So, for example, there are some bacteria that work a little more specifically for somebody who's very sensitive, like autoimmune, who's has an overreactive immune system. In that case, something like rhamnosus or rhamnosus or even Saccharomyces boulardii would be helpful, because it really helps to calm the gut down, helps to calm that immune system down, because the gut and the immune system also are linked. Yes. And so, the majority of the immune system is in the gut. And so what happens in there is really important for how your body is able to protect itself. It gives those messages to all the, the bugs and the other mucous membranes, including the lungs. So if your gut is imbalanced, if you don't have those good bacteria in there, it's not necessarily going to give that message to the rest of the body, including, these days we're seeing a lot of, imbalances in the lung tissues. So we're not going to have that, that direct connection there if we don't have that in place. And so there are specific strains of bacteria that I would recommend in certain cases. But for the most part, I really focus on food. I really focus on trying to find a way that they can get, that good balance of bacteria by giving the gut those foods that will feed those bacteria. Now, in cases where you have antibiotics that have been used for a long period of time, those are the times that I would say, yes, definitely, we want to help, because the probiotics in that case would serve as a temporary, almost like temporary army for the gut. When you wipe out all the bacteria in your gut by using antibiotics, there really is no, you're kind of left without an army in there to protect you. And so in that sense, putting in a probiotic on opposite times, obviously, of the antibiotic would be a helpful thing, just to kind of keep that vigilance happening in the gut. And a lot of infection.
Soldiers on guard.
Exactly. Because otherwise you might be susceptible to something like a yeast overgrowth, which takes advantage. A lot of bacteria and yeasts take advantage of nobody there holding the fort. And they come in and they, overgrow. Lot of, these, what we call opportunistic bacteria in the gut. So those are the times you really want a broad spectrum, probiotic, probably a good dosage, but, I'm not really that, specific in terms of, okay, we need 50,000 or you need 100,000. I really like to go low and slow with my clients. So a lot of people, they think, okay, I'm going to do the 100,000, and they think they can tolerate that, but then they end up with something like loose stools. And so always a smart approach, I think, for really working with something that maybe you're not used to having or taking into your body, is to do a little bit first. So do, a small dose, see how your body feels. And if it's okay, then you can go up to the full dose slowly. but never to just rush into a full dose of something, especially if it's, you know, a bacteria or even a supplement or anything that you're not used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So to give us an example, what is often the common reason that people need help or they come to you for help? What is a general problem that you would start with? Hydration, work towards gut health. Yeah. What's the biggest complaint that you hear of? Common complaint.
Yeah, one most common is gas and bloating. Mm-hmm. Gas, bloating, indigestion, acid reflux sometimes, but more is the gas and the bloating. Yeah. And so with that, you know, this is something I teach my clients, and this is something I really like to teach them, because I don't think it's as simple as just telling them, okay, you do this and you take that. It's really about educating them about how their body works. And so for me, when I talk to them about the gas and bloating, I look at their diet first to see, okay, is there anything there that might be causing an issue? At the same time, we have to look at eating hygiene. So eating hygiene would be, how do you eat? Yeah, eating hygiene would be, how do you eat? So are you, when you sit down to eat, are you calm? Are you in a, you know, relaxed state? Are you chewing your food? That is huge, because, you know, we don't think about that. And it really astounds me. When I first started my practice, it astounded me how many people didn't think about that. And so how important that is. Mm-hmm. And if you don't chew your food, I mean, that's the first place of digestion. And that, you know, you're chewing your food to make it easier for your stomach to break it down with that stomach acid. And if you're not chewing your food, you're just gulping it down. That's more work for your stomach. That's more stomach acid it has to pump out. If you don't have sufficient stomach acid, which a lot of people don't due to stress, then those undigested food particles are going to pass right on through into the intestines. And then what happens is that is fermentation, because we're not supposed to have those big undigested chunks of food in the intestines like that. They should be fully masticated. They should be a mush by the time they reach your intestines. And so what happens when we have these undigested food particles going into the lower intestines, those bacteria that live in the small or in the large intestine, in the bowels, most of the bacteria in your gut is actually resident mainly in the bowels. At some point, they will get the message that there's lots of food up there, and pretty soon they'll start migrating upwards. And that's when we end up with something called Sibo, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So we end up with what's called healthy bacteria in the wrong place. So a lot of people think of Sibo as bad bacteria. It's actually not so much. It's actually good bacteria. It's your normal bacteria, but it's just migrated up because of the food fodder that's higher up that they found up there. And so,
party.
Exactly, there's like a big feast for them. And so that's one of the trickier things.
Does that create the gas?
Gas, and yeah, it's all fermentation that's happening. So when I look at gas and bloating, I think, oh, there's fermentation happening. Fermentation happens with mainly carbohydrates. You don't really get fermentation with fats. You do get it from protein as well, but to the extent it's carbohydrates. So a lot of people find that, you know, if they have the gas and bloating, if they just cut out their carbohydrates, go on a, you know, keto diet, actually that improves a lot. That's not to say that I agree with everybody doing the keto. That's actually a whole different topic, but very specific diet for very specific conditions, in my opinion. Yeah. Not something everybody should take on. No. You know, with the rage back then was, oh, everybody's losing weight on the keto diet. Yes, I'm going to do the keto diet. Yeah. There's so much more involved in that than just changing your diet like that.
And it's very hard on your kidneys and your bladder.
And the liver, because the liver has to process all of that. Yeah. But the gas and bloating is, it's a big one. So this is why I always go back. It's like, okay, how are you digesting your food if you're having this on a daily basis? And so just getting people to chew well, just getting people to sit down and take a few breaths, you know, before they eat.
Mindful eating.
Mindful eating. As well as, you know, not drinking lots of liquids while you're, you know, because that can cause, you know, a bit of gas in itself. Stomach acid is pretty potent, so it's not necessarily, there's an old belief that it dilutes the stomach acid. You're going to have to drink a whole lot of water in order for that diluting to happen. The studies that I've read show that, drinking water with meals is not really effective or affecting the stomach acid at all.
Oh.
But if you're drinking lots and lots, then that would just, I think, more lead to indigestion more than anything else. But that's a big component of it is, this is really what part of the foundational basics, starting them with that. If they're doing that for a while and things don't improve, then we can look at, shifting, obviously in the midst of that, we're seeing if the diet needs shifting, if there needs to be more of a focus on more whole foods, if they're not there already. And then the stress, of course, having that environment for good digestion. The body doesn't digest well in a sympathetic state. It actually requires a parasympathetic state in order to produce that stomach acid. So if we, a lot of us rushing off to work in the morning are sort of stressed out because you're late or something and you just gulp down your breakfast. I would rather that person just not eat that morning, or wait until they get to work and have something
at
like
the desk,
a protein smoothie or something when they're actually more relaxed, because that, they could be choosing something healthy, but you're not necessarily going to be absorbing it or digesting it.
So what I'm hearing, to just give our listeners some tips here, is to hydrate properly using electrolytes, to slow down and calm yourself so that you're in a relaxed state when you're eating. To visit you if you're really having consistent problems, and you do online sessions. But in a minute, we're going to talk about the other side of your work. It's fascinating, really, how important it is, as in almost everything, to slow down and be mindful in the present moment. So you're chewing your food carefully, enjoying your food, tasting it, actually being present. And I think that alone would help a lot of people have better digestive issues. What I want to ask you, I know you do therapeutic touch and Reiki, and so do I.
Not Reiki, actually. I did shamanic healing for quite a few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I misread that.
That's okay.
So what I'd like you to share is how therapeutic touch and energy work combines so beautifully with the functional medicine food changes that people would need to make to heal themselves, and how you've noticed that incorporates very well that shift of doing both.
Yeah, I do like the combination of those two modalities. It's something that I started with energy healing many years before I even started studying nutrition or functional medicine. And after a while, I did notice that I found that in itself wasn't enough.
No.
It felt like there was a piece missing I really wanted to help people in a deeper way. And I found that was amazing in the sense of really helping people work through a lot of stuck emotions and a lot of stuck trauma, things that they might not even be conscious of. Really beautiful work that I did with people. It's not something I practice anymore, except for, when requested. But I found that working that way, I just felt there was something else that needed to be in there. And that's when I started studying nutrition and functional medicine, I found like this would be a really beautiful combination, a complement of modalities to help somebody with.
And I think the reason that is because as a therapeutic touch practitioner or energy worker, you are working over people, supporting the energy that's coming off of their body that might be fractured or disconnected. And it's very calming and it's beautiful and it can reset them. But they also need to understand how they got to that state. And with diet and lifestyle, they're taking personal responsibility as well. So they're not going to a practitioner to calm them down and have them rebalance, which is beautiful. But if they don't change the way that they're eating, living, and dealing with stress, it's like having a shower, once in your lifetime.
Yeah.
It's all very well, but that's not enough. You need to have a shower every day, or at least every few days, let's just be fair, because you're going to get dirty. And it's exactly the same with energy work.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle, your quality of your thoughts and your emotions affect your energy. Going to a practitioner, they can help balance your energy and release that. But if you don't change your practice, you're going to consistently stay fractured in your energy. So it is not enough, in my opinion, to support changing a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly right. And those are exactly my thoughts, and why I actually wanted something more.
Yeah.
I found that, the energy work really helps with almost like with somebody who's really stuck, who's not really aware yet of what they have accumulated in their bodies. Exactly. They just know they don't feel well, or they're going through some emotional struggle.
They're upset.
And the energy healing is a really gentle way of actually almost nudging those pieces out a little bit, kind of shaking things up just in a gentle way. And so once that starts moving, then are you ready to take responsibility? And because in a sense, you're being caretaken of when you're receiving an energy healing.
Well, this is why many nurses are trained in the art of therapeutic touch.
Exactly.
In all the hospitals. Some of the best nurses in the world use therapeutic touch. Why? Because when somebody is chronically sick or in recovery in hospital, and they don't have the ability to change their lifestyle in that moment, they're in chronic state of stress. The energy work can shift their body into a calm state so that their body can start healing itself in that space.
Exactly.
But they're lying in hospital. They're not going back to work, running around, getting their energy all frazzled. They're in hospital. They're very sick. A nurse or a doctor will give them therapeutic touch, and it complements the healing and the medicine that they're getting in the hospital so that they can heal faster. And they've done many studies on this. This is why touch even is so powerful for us humans.
Exactly. And I think too, it helps to move out the noise. We're exposed to a lot of noise around us, and this is more like energetic noise, our thoughts and, those kinds of things. And the therapeutic touch, but also, any type of energy work you do actually helps to really to kind of give that a little space. And so when you can do that, then that, like what you said, it calms that body down. It allows them. The one other thing too that I found is that so many people, and I would say now the majority of people, really need that nurturing. There's a lot of trauma in our society.
There really is, yeah.
A lot. And so, having somebody just in a non-invasive way, do some gentle healing work on you, is really something that, can be pretty profound.
Well, yeah, because I notice it with people when I give them treatments. It's a mother love. It's almost like they're desperate for some mother love.
Yeah.
Just somebody just to give them a little bit of love and tenderness, because you're right. These are very difficult times and we're dealing with so much. We've just become so normal for us. Life used to be very simple and now it's very, very complicated. We're juggling a lot.
Yeah. Agree.
Beautiful. I love this topic. Because as in doing any kind of holistic work, it's about starting, it's the whole body, the whole body experience from the feet up to the crown of the head and all the way around and inside and out. The quality, and this is why I do this show, it's the quality of your thoughts, your actions, your diet, your lifestyle, your friends, your work. All of it is integrated so importantly and so beautifully to create the life that we do have. So with some subtle little shifts, coming to see a doctor like yourself, a practitioner like yourself, you don't need to have a massive change in your life. You don't need to, leave your husband, leave your job, go traveling around the world, ditch your life to change it. You can make small changes within yourself to shift and nurture and heal and love yourself to a place where everything then changes around you because you're balanced.
Exactly.
And then suddenly you think it's all because everything's going wrong in your life. You don't like everything, but actually it's just a few small changes.
And sometimes those small changes make all the difference, because sometimes, and I see this a lot, is, the body might be struggling, but it just needs those foundational needs that we talked about. Once it starts receiving those things, it's amazing how some people's bodies respond. How my clients go from, I had a client who had suffering with palpitations, high blood pressure, fatigue, joint pain, all the gamut for years. And
go to the doctor and they get beta blockers, they're given all the medicines.
High blood sugar, all of these things. And, really starting her off with really simple steps. Within a few weeks, she said she felt like a whole new person.
Yes.
And she's like, and at the end of her, we're still working together, actually. This is almost a year later. But she said, after, she really realized at some point, you really didn't tell me to do anything drastic. Mm. It was all just really simple steps. But what a difference that made for her. And I see this again and again and again with my clients. So we all, there's not necessarily such esoteric, treatment plans that need to happen for people. We just need to give the body what it needs. And the body has this remarkable ability to really rebalance itself. And we just
it wants to survive.
Right.
Our body wants us to have long life.
Exactly.
And wants us to be healthy. It's constantly working. And honestly, guys, if anyone's listening to this, all you have to think about, when you cut yourself, your little soldier of defenses come out, clot your blood, and within a day or two, your cut is almost healed. Like, obviously, if it needs stitches, it's more healing that's needed. But your body's constantly in repair. It's like magic. If you just think about that one act of a slightly cut skin surface and how your body is healing it.
And I think that's a great way to think about that, because, our body is not our enemy. And sometimes we think it is, we have all these issues. But it really is doing its best to really heal us and to take care of us. And that means if we start having like chronic inflammation, what do you think inflammation is? Inflammation is the body's way of trying to soothe that area that's damaged. High LDL, cholesterol, it's been demonized. It's actually got a beautiful function in the body. It's, it really helps to patch up. It's like the little ambulance that goes around into the arteries and patches up what needs fixing. And so we say, we have high LDL in our blood work. And that we don't realize, it's like, well, we just want to treat that with drugs without really asking, well, what is the body fixing? What is the body needing to heal from, that it's sending out all this cholesterol into, to patch up, to do all the patch up work? What's needing patching up? And why do what's happening in the body? We don't ask those questions enough. And this is what I love about functional medicine, is that it really does, this is the basis of the work, is we ask those questions. We ask the why. Why is the body responding in this way? And, not about suppressing symptoms, not about treating. And, of course, there's also always a time and place for treatment, and a time and place for medications. Yeah. But it's not done nearly enough than it should be. No. So our goal here is to help people get well and stay well, not to be dependent on medications for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So that's
which have a whole contraindication too. Like you take a medication for one thing and it can give you something else. I'm not against modern medicine at all. I thoroughly respect and support modern medicine. And bless our hospitals and our nurses and oh my gosh, and all the work they do. But I do believe in taking responsibility for our own bodies and our lifestyles and our choices.
Absolutely.
And actually visiting a person like yourself and becoming educated. Because I think, what you don't know, you don't know. Once you do know, and you don't want to participate actively, then you're going to get the results you're going to get. So you need to make those decisions. How can people find you now? I know you're on navigatorforwellness.com.
Yes.
Silvi Graber. How else? Do you have your own website as well?
I do have a website. It's www.sageheartnutrition.wordpress.com. It's a little bit long, but
that's okay. But you can also find you through Navigator for Wellness.
And I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, just Sage Heart Nutrition, and on Instagram as well, and under the same name,
Sage Heart
Nutrition. Yep. All one word, Sage Heart.
And just anyone interested in contacting me to speak to Sylvia can always message me at figsandhoney@me.com. And I can always put you in touch with anybody that I've had on the show if you're interested in connecting with them, because I've got lots of interesting people that have been coming on the show and lots hopefully to come. Silvi, I've really, really enjoyed your chat today, and I know this is a conversation we could sit here for hours discussing. Yes. So I'm sure you'll come back on the show and we'll focus on something else. But you've given some golden nuggets to people and food for thought. And I know my curiosity is piqued in certain areas here, and I can guarantee that there's a few listeners out there that have gone, oh my gosh, I need to snap up my ideas and think about this. So you've been great today, and I really appreciate you coming to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
You're welcome. Now, I also just want to add at the end of this, so for anyone wanting to come onto the show, please do contact me at figsandhoney@me.com or through chir.fm. And that can easily be found on Radio Garden if you download the app. It's actually amazing as an app. You can put your cursor anywhere in the world and listen to radio shows all over the world. I'm hooked on that. And Salt Spring is there, and we are very visible if you hover over Salt Spring. So thank you again, Silvi, for coming to this show. I really enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.